any properties or anything?
Yeah, it's just going to be an intro. I want to see what their kind of overall is, because they have a couple of different components. They have to have a land developer involved with lots because of their development, so I want to go unpack that, have you really understand what it is, so that we can see whether it's worth it. Or just has new assets come in that are developing, we can show them.
All right, Bruce, we're live.
Welcome everybody. We're Real Estate ReWired and we are live. Thank you, Adam.
Nice.
Thank you everybody here. Dory, good to see you as well. And we're episode 5. This is the art of commercial lease negotiation. Now, I know everybody here just loves when they see art of commercial lease negotiation. I do too. You know why? Because this is where you see the buildings, the office, retail, large industrial, they all get done with a lease. And if a parent company is holding it and they're representing themselves and sharing it out, you better know what you're doing when you get these leases, because these agreements are airtight when they come through legal, and it's something that you want to unpack today. So with that said, we are unpacking the art of commercial lease negotiation. With that said, we're going to jump right into it. This course is going to teach you the basics of commercial lease negotiation, number 1. Second, some intermediary lease negotiation points, and we're going to review exactly what definitions that you need to know, and the verbiage that it takes to transact. We're going to conclude at the end with some market knowledge. Sounds good? Sounds great. Diving right into it. Commercial leases aren't contracts, they're weapons. Always remember, most agents don't understand them, tenants fear them, and landlords just want someone who knows how to structure them. That's direct from me to you guys, because out here in the street, these are armed like weapons for landlords and tenants to make sure that they can accomplish their goals. The difference between staying in the space and healthily growing your business or getting clobbered and going out of business in a couple of years could come down straight to whether or not you negotiated a good lease, a bad lease, an unfavorable lease. And these are points that we want to clean up. Arm you guys out here in the streets with better knowledge to make sure you're making right deals. With that said, commercial leases are weapons. So always remember and understand where we're at with commercial leases. So our topic today, I'm your host, Bruce Elia Jr. I'm the managing director of our KW commercial firm in City Views and lead ERG and Trelia as well, our land development vertically integrated division. So what do we have? We've got a lot of experience, 15 years in the business, and I'm here to help you guys out with what commercial points are the most effective for you to take into your business, to take from a landlord perspective, take from a tenant perspective, which side of the equation you're on, so that you can do the best that it is for your side. Now, what does that mean? There's going to be differences, right? Differences. Difference between what a tenant wants, what a landlord wants, than a broker. You know, it kind of reminds me of the old meme. When you see the value of a property and you look at it from all these different angles, the picture looks different. So what does the picture look to you, and where are you coming from as a frame of reference to be able to speak from? So we're going to establish those key lease negotiations and really master the skill of this. Moving forward, let's go into what 4 types of common leases are that you guys are going to see in the marketplace. We're starting with a gross lease. Gross lease, landlord, they pay all the expenses. So think gross lease, landlord pays the expenses. It's the highest landlord risk. Why? Because you're paying everything. It's not netted out to a tenant. Now here's the thing, tenants love this. They want, oh yeah, let me pay one fee and that's all. That favors them. So whenever we seek to lease negotiate, we're always looking at what the CAM charges, common area maintenance is, with what the rent is, okay? We'll go into that next. So gross lease, think landlord pays all the expenses. Modified gross. What is a modified gross lease? You would imagine it's probably something modified, right? Very straightforward. So it means that there's a hybrid. Landlord pays some expenses, tenant pays some expenses, and even risk is associated with that. Now, what is the next one? So we've got a gross and a modified gross. Next one would be probably netting, right? Triple net. So if you've ever seen the wording N, the triple net lease, you know that it's net, net, net. Now here's the thing. Sometimes when I was out there, especially early on, I was like, what is a double N net lease, right? It's like, what is this? So that'll land itself into the modified gross. So write this down. If you ever see 2 N's instead of 3 as a triple net, it means it's basically a modified gross. There's net net, but there's one other item that the landlord's paying. Okay. Next up on the triple net is going to be where the tenant pays the taxes, insurance, the CAM charges on the property. This is best suited for landlords. If you are a landlord and you're not setting yourself up with success with triple net leases, I'd encourage you to reconfigure what those look like when they come renew, or when you go out to market, hire a broker like myself or a team or another agent that kicks butt in this marketplace to make sure that you transfer it into a triple net. Instead of having the expenses paid, you actually get either reimbursed or it's netted out to the tenant and they pay it direct. It's a very favorable way. It's predictable income. You know every month what it is. Because if the charges on your taxes go up each year in the life of this lease, and it's 5 or 10 years, who's paying for it? In a gross lease, that's the landlord. In a net lease, triple net lease, it's the tenant. So what does that mean? Insurance too. These days, insurance is skyrocketing. And what does that mean? It means that it's less risk, it's predictable income. Okay? For most landlords, triple net leases are the most favorable in terms of where you want to position yourself. Now what's the last one, Bruce? You said there's 4, right? Well, I got 4 for you, because the last one typically is anchored within retail shopping centers because they're percentage lease. Now, when we've sold in the past, we've sold where there's been percentage leases and the revenue has to hit a certain amount and then there's a share above it. So let's say that you had a $50 million revenue hit that you have to hit in that retail shopping center for that one anchor. Let's say it hit 60. Well, if you're in a revenue share and maybe you had 25% of that upside revenue, you got yourself an extra $2.5 million as a landlord. Pretty cool, right? Well, think base rent, percentage sales, and it's used in retail. So if you see shopping centers like that, you're a landlord, that's a favorable way. It's also some ways that have gone by the wayside over time, depending on where the asset's located, desirability, supply demand theories, okay? But very, very good weapon to use in terms of a percentage lease. So what are the 4 types of commercial leases? Backtracking to give you an understanding, we have gross lease, we have a modified gross lease, we have a triple net lease, and we have a percentage lease. Those are the 4 leases that we're describing. So if you have anything that you're seeing as a lease, all you have to do is understand which bucket is it fitting in first. It'll give you clarity. Clarity is key. Because if you're drifting around in this world, you're never going to know what's going on. Simplify it. Turn the chaos into clarity. Simple as that. 4 commercial leases, and those are the structures. Moving forward, we always know, we come with an athlete mindset, okay? The offense and the defense is the framework around it. Are we playing offense? Are we playing defense? Where are we? Are the referees in the game? Who knows? And I tell you this because a landlord, you gotta make sure you're going on offense. A tenant, you gotta make sure that you're going on defense. Now, what does that look like? Unpack that for me, happily, okay? A landlord, when you're pushing, you're going higher rent, you want stronger escalations, which means year-over-year increased percentages. So what does that mean? It means that if you have a 2% escalation versus a 4% escalation, who's winning? Landlord, right, at 4%, tenant at 2%, especially when our standard is 3. You have shorter contingency periods they want when they're playing offense. Your limited assignment, it's a triple net structure, right? And obviously the CAM is gonna always favor the landlord. That's offense. So
you have a whiteboard, so if you ever want to use that, and it's in frame, so you're good. And also Melissa says, I don't know, Melissa says you are the best, Bruce.
All right, Melissa, we love you too. Thank you. So tenant defense, Adam, can you grab me a?
I got you. I marker right here.
All right, wonderful. So guys, think landlord offense.
Visually show.
I was a quarterback. I loved it. Played at the University of New Hampshire. Throwing the rock was the best part of the game. I loved offense. Defense, not so much. I like to beat the defenders, right? But that was my equation on that side. So think, which one? If I got to play defense and I'm on the tenant rep side, I got to bring my shoulder pads and be ready to hit, because that's exactly what's going to happen. On offense, I want to score points. I want to throw the ball long. And that's what landlords are doing with you guys right now in this marketplace. So landlord offense, to repeat this and understand, they want higher rents, stronger escalations, shorter contingencies, triple net leases, favored CAM. Okay? What's the opposite, Bruce? What is the defense around there? That's what we're going to talk about. So a tenant, they're playing defense. Now, they're going to protect cap on escalations. So instead of the landlord hitting me with 4, I'm going 2. We meet in the middle at a standard of 3. Maybe that's a fair way. Okay? Free rent. How much time do I get as a tenant to get this space situated? I don't know. Sometimes when we request, I've seen people on 10-year leases just out the other day, literally, they're requesting 6 to 9 months. Talking to a landlord saying, you know, what do you want to do about this? They want a 10-year lease, it's a great value, but what they're looking at is 6 to 9 months. However, they're investing $500,000 into this site, and it could be favorable for you as a landlord because it increases the value of your building. Are you willing to wait? And this is all a financial equation. So think defense, free rent, TI allowance. TI, we're going through it, Jason and I, understanding what does it take for bigger national entry level, tenant improvement, longer lease, money's involved into it. Tenant improvement, TI. How much do we have to give out to get this really great credited tenant in there to show a win-win for both sides? That's when we're thinking about that. So free rent, if I'm a tenant, how much free rent can I get? How much TI will the landlord give me? Can I limit my escalations to as little as possible? No percentage rent, nothing that's gonna alter me. CAM charges, maybe they're capped. Maybe I put a literal cap on it so that we don't have anything that's unfavorable. So 1 year it doesn't jump 10, 20, 50K. Those are the ways that we play defense. And remember, leasing, it is full chess game. This is not checkers, guys. If you are thinking that you're on a checkers board when you jump into a commercial transaction, I'll tell you otherwise. A chess game. And the same way that we're seeing a lot of people play chess out here, and it's 3D chess to its fullest, especially with large macro companies, you gotta play the same game back. You gotta anticipate. So, framework around this would be to standardize everything that we have and understand in your brain. Right from the get-go, market rate rents and escalations, they're at 3%. Standard framework of leases is 5 and 10 years. Anything less, tenant favored. Anything more, landlord fee. Once you get a threshold above 10, it's dicey and it chops, and that's where a lot of nationals and AAA credit tenants want that. You have to structure them properly so that the landlord doesn't get knocked off by the knees because of somebody credited. Other times we've seen they build in leases very favorable for them, and lengths of time happen, markets change, and let's say that pricing is now 10 or 20 times more what it should be. Puts the landlord in bad state. And that's what we want to protect against if we're landlord driven. Tenants, we want to make sure they're healthy and driven in the business. We want to make sure we build in maybe the entry level of year 1 and 2 a little bit lighter, something that they can make up on 3, 4, and 5 if there's a price gap. It allows the business to get healthy. It allows everybody involved to win, because if one party is only winning in these, the other one's losing, you're not going to be in business that long. These are direct relationships of landlord and tenants that secure leases based on healthy businesses, and they go. Because if you know 80% of businesses fail in 5 years, and another 80% of them fail in the 10. So chances are low. That's why they want to have protection clauses. Other things that we didn't talk about, which is certainly something that's applicable, is the PG, personal guarantee. Learned a lot in the course of time with PGs on where these tenants go with that, because sometimes somebody will PG the entire life of the lease. Other times, maybe they'll do half, or trailing 12, or T12 they'll call it on that, which means that they'll guarantee 12 months of that rent if they go out. These are all big things that you guys have to understand, and we have to understand in the marketplace on playing offense and defense.
Can you briefly just touch up on personal guarantee and why it's so important?
Yes, great question.
Like explain it to me like I'm like a child, and why it's so important in commercial real estate to understand for leasing.
It's a great question, Adam. So when we start understanding the personal guarantee, think I'm a landlord, okay? I have risk associated with the tenant that I'm gonna put in there. So simply put, hey, I'm gonna put you, tenant A, in there, but you're a new business, and you're unestablished, but you got a bunch of money and you can financially do it. Or tenant B, you're willing to pay a little bit less, personally guarantee it, have an established business in there, and you wanna move ahead, but it's a little less. But the other one doesn't have a guarantee. What does it mean? It means in 2-3 years, when the tenant goes out and the business failed, the landlord can recapture their money based on the life of the lease if they have a personal guarantee in it, because that allows them to. If they didn't, and this is an LLC, maybe the tenant just says, you know what, bankrupt the LLC, move on, and there's no personal guarantee associated with it, which is then tenant favored. So imagine you're the landlord and you go into a situation where you don't have the good advice that you need from your legal counsel, your professional real estate broker, and they go out and you have no recourse. What does that look like? A horror show. Maybe it puts you in a terrible financial position, you need to liquidate the building immediately. Maybe you're put into a horrible position with your family, untrusted. There's so many layers that it can go into. Just understand that the best way to framework a commercial lease is to make sure that there's a personal guarantee on the entire lease. If not, we can do things like trailing 2 years. So what does that mean? It means that I'll guarantee the rent for 2 years if I go out. And on top of it, you can find somebody else to replace me. Once you replace me, then I'm off the hook, the new person's on the hook, and we sever that relationship. Be careful, because a story back in the day that had happened to my father was when he had opened up an ice cream shop. And the life of the lease was actually, it runs with the property. So if he subletted that property out and then that new tenant went out, he's still liable. And that's what happens in these games. So you have to learn what that looks like. So if you get in there and then you sublease and then they go out, you may still be liable, right? So that's where these negotiations come into play. Now, everyone's hot and heavy when they're getting into the business. They want to sign, they want to run through these things. I get it. I do too. We all do. It's not the smart way to do it. Do it methodically, do it strategically, use personal guarantees so that you can virtually guarantee your income. Moving ahead, let's look. What do those clauses look like, Bruce? What are the details of this? Well, I'm going to name the 15 most important lease clauses that we have. I'm going to go one by one with them so that you can understand exactly what these are in good fashion. And then you can use them in the marketplace to talk about, to understand, and internalize to help clients, whether it's a landlord or it's a tenant. First, premises definition clearly defines the physical space being leased. You may also hear demised premises. It's the same thing. What's the property? Why? Because there's certain times where there might be 3-4 addresses associated with a commercial space. Which specific space, which premise in that entire retail strip is the space that we're talking about and releasing. So you got to define what the premises is. Your base rent. Base rent's the core rent for the leased premises. This is going to be just the price per square foot of what it actually is trading in the marketplace for. You understand that? That's what the rent is quantified based on the square footage of the space that you desire. Okay. Moving ahead to additional rent, CAM, TI. Think additional rent is going to be associated with CAM, which is common area maintenance, and that's going to be as if you own and operate the property from a tenant's perspective. Imagine you're a tenant, you get an entire property, you take care of the parking lot, take care of the building, and maybe the landlord takes care of the roof or common elements associated with the structure. That could be a common way that you see that. Now, what does it mean? Tenant is then paying all the property taxes, all the insurance. If it's snowing, they're going to pay the snow removal for the cars, their cars to go in there, their clients' cars, customers. It's also going to be anything of improvement. You know, there's thresholds that go with these that say, hey, anything above this or only relating to these elements the landlord handles, and this is what the tenant handles. Right? TI. We've had a number of situations where TI monies is having to be put into the property in order to find the tenant. Tenant improvement, TI, means a landlord gives the tenant money to build their business in the space, and then they recapture that money typically in the life of the lease. Now, maybe not year 1, but year 3, 4, and 5, maybe they start adding a premium to that lease while the business is healthy to recapture the amount of money that they put into the property in order for that business to grow.
So what situations would you see like that TI kind of in, like where it's tenant improvement and the landlord will give them that coverage? Like, can you elaborate on that a bit more, because it was a little bit confusing.
So imagine we've got a national, and let's say they're coming in here.
You can stand if you want. It'll still keep it in cam, but.
Okay. Well, let's just even use a Chipotle or any of these that are right across the street.
Yep.
They may come in, and it depends on the space itself. If it's a cold dark shell, which means there's no flooring,
yep,
there's a lot more, it depends, because then there's going to be TI monies associated with getting it up. So that means, okay, we're going to give you $25 a foot. You have a 2,000 square foot space, or $20 a foot.
Okay.
So we'll give you $40,000 for that.
Okay.
You then put it into the space, take your own monies, put the rest of it in, and make that beautiful design of the store.
Got it.
Or they may say, hey, we allocate $50 a foot, we recapture in year 3, 4, and 5, you know, what that is. So we'll give you $100,000 over 3 years, 3, 4, and 5. We every month will get a small payment to get our money back. That's what tenant improvement is.
Got it.
It could be small. Now, let's say that the space is already built out and somebody's spent that money.
Yeah.
There's no tenant improvement needed if you're consistent on the same use.
Yes.
You know, we're selling multiple cannabis shops right now. In that same format, we're expecting cannabis delivered because it's the highest and best use.
Mm-hmm.
No TI monies.
Wow.
Now, here's this. Imagine then we have somebody else coming through the door and it's a different use. Maybe it's a medical use and they need an office building set out and they want to have some portion of the landlord spend it because they're accredited tenant. Hey, I'm a medical doctor. I want you to put some money in, I'll put the rest. That's where it becomes like, ooh, you just spent $2 million on this build out, you're changing the use, is it worth it to do that? Or is it worth it to consistently keep the same type of tenant use in with lease resistant friction?
What are some of the best sort of transitions you've seen from like somebody use this in like a real life scenario where they kind of they change what the tenant is and what the business classifies as?
Ask the question again, just so I understand.
Like you mentioned, like with the cannabis dispensary, like, and then you can take that cannabis dispensary and make it into like a medical building, or what I don't know what you just said there, but you were saying there could be some sort of like value to that if you're able to recognize this could be better there over this.
Yeah, so I think highest and best use would be really price per square foot, income and expense, and then development.
Yep.
For where we're talking about, cannabis is an untapped potential because
Yep.
it's got a good market for high volume in terms of pricing, traction, etc. But it's got a lot of fugazis. A lot of the people that we're seeing out here, they're unfunded, they're haphazard, and they're not in good standing. Honestly, a lot of them are out here across. And that's exactly what the opposite is. So you gotta filter that down, which becomes, can you guys shut that door if you don't mind?
Yeah. But yeah, cannabis overall has a better price per square foot value than something else because of
its use. So it's a specialized use because you have approvals. Let's say you have a license, you go to that address, and it's only specific to certain zoning. So then therefore, all of a sudden, you're willing to pay more because it's a little bit less. It's supply-demand theory. There's not enough cannabis locations, so if you have a license, you've got to go there, leverage is on the landlord or the owner of the property.
I have a quick question, if you don't mind. When would a landlord choose to use TI or free rent?
They've got a good credited tenant. They want to make sure that they secure a 10-year lease. They're willing to give some TI monies. Let's say I give you 50 grand to get the property into order because you're going to take a 10-year lease, pay every single month at standard escalations. And
Right, but why TI over free rent?
Well, you may have free rent too. You may get a 60-day concession or 30-day, which it leads itself to the negotiation itself. So think, if we can see the forest and not the trees, we have a better chance of negotiating that lease at a higher level.
Sure.
Like you know that they don't need TI money. Our leverage to the landlord is, hey, we don't need TI money. We're not asking for it. We're actually asking for a few more months of rent build out for us. It's more reasonable to request those instead. But if you request everything, it sometimes could show that one, you're either A, or a rookie, you don't know anything, read a book and threw everything, or B, you have reasoning, like i.e. it actually has it, or C, it's more like, hey, these people just want to take everything they possibly can, and unless they're more reasonable, kind of kick rocks.
So one last question, TI monies usually have interest tied to them?
TI is what?
Has interest tied to them?
Interest, no, it's typically not interest tied to it. That's a great question. It's usually just a dollar for dollar wash. There's no real cost opportunity to that money. Great question to read, because over time that could be a lot of money, especially with an increase with an interest-bearing account, things like that.
Maybe another added value to add to the landlord.
Yeah, and I'd say that you can negotiate that if that was the case. All right, so we're moving on. Escalations basically outlines how the base rent every year will be increased. Let's say that you own our space, just leasing our space right here. What is it every single year that we have to increase? Well, Bruce, why would we increase every year? Well, taxes increase every year. Insurance does. Operating costs do. Inflation, snow removal. So of course we got to pay more. So if you're a person that's saying, oh, well, we don't want any escalations, well, the only times I've never seen that happen is on large leasing where they're going to be 5-year tranches. Take CVS or Walgreens, they have some good examples where every 5 years maybe they'll increase 12%, 15%. that's a different model, and it's still an applicable model, but it's certainly one that favors the tenant, not the landlord. The best format for any landlord is to have standard escalations from that point year over year. When you look at the numbers, after the math theory, like Gary Keller says, it's right there in front of you visually.
So not committing to like a contract with that specific tenant over the course of like 10 years, but rather gradually increasing that.
Yeah. So
But can you do that in a contract?
You can. So when you look at it, if, okay, so we're taking one of our properties right now for commercial lease. Right?
Mhm.
Negotiating 3% each year, plus they pay the expenses for the CAN. It's
Yeah.
a wonderful deal for the landlord and the tenant, works out great.
Mm-hmm.
In that sense, it's just regular escalations. If I was gonna say, hey, over the life of that lease, you're gonna do 10-year lease, but year 5, you're gonna jump 12% instead of each year at 3%.
Yeah.
Look at the compounding effect of 3%.
Yeah, compound. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Okay.
think, if we understand compounding method, that's where you're gonna see the most favorability.
Could you show that visually, potentially?
Yeah.
Just show like what,
Okay, so,
and then we got a question in the group chat really, or not the group chat, in the live stream.
great question.
Melissa asked, she said agent in charge to do commercial lease and add those clauses. Only an attorney is in charge of doing the lease and the agent makes sure all parties accept what is in the
Absolutely.
lease.
Attorney-driven lease, we're not drafting the leases, we're guiding them
Okay,
in terms of the points.
okay,
Remember, brokers don't do leases in the state of New Jersey for commercial. She's absolutely accurate, and that's exactly correct. What we're doing is guiding them. We're playing kind of bumper bowling to keep the things within line based on it with the legal.
and then Ho Shui actually asked,
Ooh, what do we got?
is there a limit on the year increase in the commercial rent?
Ooh, I mean, theoretically, no. In reality, absolutely. You know,
Mhm.
nobody's gonna wanna have increases that are so
And
drastic.
But
So-
but residential has a set number
Rent
that you
control.
rent control, but commercial doesn't. But there is a set number that's kind of like that equilibrium point that people are willing to pay, correct?
Yeah, I think that there's, I mean, if you wanna charge 20% extra each year in commercial, the tenant's willing to sign it, that'll take effect.
Yeah.
At the same point, residentially, because it's individuals and homes and things, it's a
Mhm.
totally different animal.
Got it.
Great
Got it.
question, and a serious difference between the two.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's take $100, okay? Say your lease is $100, okay, on each one. We're gonna do the 5-year versus the each year. So this is gonna be the 5-year method. So it's a 10-year lease at year 5. At year 5, this goes up 12%, okay? So year 5 plus 12%, okay? Now, what does that mean?
560.
So it goes to what, 560? Wait, 12% on $100 plus 12%?
What? I'm sorry, 500. I'm sorry.
Wait.
112.
112.
Yeah. Okay. I was
Keep it standard here, guys. Alright.
I was confused where we got 500 from. Alright.
Now, here's the difference. Just take simple math and then just do year over year. So why don't we do year 1? Okay, so if we look at that, year 1, we start at 100. 2, 103. What's 3? 103 plus 3%.
106.9. 109.
106.09.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what's 106.09 times 3%?
Plus 109.27.
Okay. And then next one?
112.55.
Okay. So you see these 5? Here, this is only a jump.
And I think that the next year is the most important, year 6.
Exactly, because then.
Well, look at the compounding. The compounding goes from 112.5, and then you start to see that snowball.
What's the 112.55 plus the 3% on that?
115.92.
That's the difference. Now imagine on big numbers.
Yeah, and then you see a 4% increase in the fall, or you see, yeah, okay, yeah, like it's compounding, so
It's
it goes
compounding
to
effect, right?
119 the next year,
Exactly. So when you look at
119.4.
the compounding effect of it, it's always going to favor an individual year over year all the time. Unless your rate is so favorable, which we haven't seen, and it's so landlord favored, which isn't typically the time, especially when tenants are credit rated, they're gonna shake the landlords down. They're gonna get better pricing than standard mom and pops. It's just the way that the world works. That's the difference of where it is. It's just a visual right here. I mean, on this, you start going over big dollars. These are big numbers. So right there, just escalations, okay? Moving forward to clauses. Clauses are going to be specific to the tenant and the landlord. Maybe there's clauses where there's operational items like freezers and mechanicals, or there's additional items like rooftop, and items that are outstanding that they need separate clauses for. Those are where specific clause interpretation comes into play. Exclusivity, it obviously would prevent any type of landlord interference with competitors. I mean, when you have a space in a retail center, and let's say that you're an existing coffee shop, you don't want another coffee shop going right next to you. So when you see that, you might want an exclusivity clause or a non-compete clause. Those are typical in there so that they can protect the business. Because otherwise a new operator will come in, boom, open up shop, and now you got competition. But also from a landlord perspective, why would you put the same ones there? You wouldn't. It's a silly thing to do. You're literally competing against each other with one of the businesses potentially going under and you as the landlord not receiving the money. Don't ever do that. I've seen people do these things and I just scratch my head as to why the heck would you do it? I don't understand it. So if you're on that side of the fence, think common sense. If I have a Chinese restaurant here, I'm not going to put another Chinese restaurant in the same location. Why would I do that? We've seen that. Just don't do it. So those are things where exclusivity comes into play. When I'm repping tenants, we're not going to allow that. You're going to have to go in. This is a dry good use. This is where it is. Non-competes, and that's that. Assignment and subleasing. I talked about and briefed this earlier. Make sure you understand assignment and subleasing. If you're in a position where you take over somebody else's lease and you're helping them out, you're getting a sublease and everything is great and it's a discount, God bless. That's awesome. You know, you're really hitting a home run. But let's say that sublease goes out and you're the original lessee and you all of a sudden have them malpracticing, maybe doing things that are not above par, maybe all these other things. You're liable under the leasehold. So understand, the landlord's going to make those leases like that. And that's going to come true. They're going to hold you to the value, hold you to what your standards are. And if you don't, you sublease it out to other people and don't do good above that, you're toast, man. And that's going to be coming directly back to you. So think assignment and subleasing, lower category unless the business is going out and you really got to replace it. Or if you're a tenant, think I can get a great deal. So if I've got a good business, I can possibly sublease, and it allows somebody to put all that extra money that they did in the beginning, rah-rah, with the piss and vinegar, starting the business, all of a sudden it failed, somebody else takes it over for pennies on the dollar. Right? Assignment and subleasing. Build out expectations is going to be basically, what is the space going to have to be built out to operate? Typically, on lease clauses, we're not going to start paying rent as a tenant until the business is open, right? Of course. So think if the business isn't open, we've done hybrids where depending on the length of time, 3 months, 6 months, maybe you pay 50% rent, 25% rent throughout that time until the business operates, where then the tenant pays the full rent. Think CO applicable, because once they're in and they've got it, then they have to start paying rent. Until then, we typically build in some times. 30, 60, 90 days is pretty common for what it is. I mean, if it's a plug-and-play space, 30 days is easy. It's the same business, plug and play. They're demising walls, they're ripping things out, they're putting counters in, maybe 60 days. You know, they're doing some infrastructure change or interior wall change, maybe it's 90. What is the specific property and where does my brain, with common sense, tell me it should be based on the education? That's what we interpret. It's really that simple.
So would you say you prioritize certain leases because of that factor of just plug and play versus like if somebody were to just walk in and then the space is already good to go, like if they were to have a Chipotle and then they put a Kava there, like it's very similar layout. Rather than a Chipotle, then they want to make that, I don't know, like a daycare center, like something like that. The timelines are going to be much different. So would you say like you would prioritize taking that over like a plug and play over a more strategic, like you gotta like clear it out, stuff like that?
All day. Adam, thanks for asking that. 100%. Think if we have a space that we know we can be flipping in, think about your local neighborhood. You know the restaurant that always goes out, new one comes in, right? It's like, how did they do this so quickly?
Yeah.
I always ask myself, how the heck did they do it so quick?
Yes.
You know, it's almost as if they didn't even have a broker and a new it's because they're just a different, it's the same thing, just different. And all they have to do is get a CO for the new use. And if they negotiate a lease and they're changing the menus and all of a sudden outside, it's an easier play than building a restaurant, right?
Absolutely.
If I build a restaurant, I'm outlaying capital.
Yeah.
You know, there's serious capital. So that's a different animal. But here's the thing, if you're leasing a built-out restaurant, you're getting a super premium.
Yeah, absolutely.
You follow? So it's that give and take methodology, which is also, shout out Give and Take the book, awesome Gary Keller recommendation from many moons ago that I love, helped me understand relationships so much better. So yeah, Adam, great question, give and take. What do we want as a broker? Guys, we want the plug and play. If it's easy, hey, you got an operation, your pricing is market driven, I can find a space, boom, you got an immediate lease. But here's the difference in that. There's not much of this product out there. There's not gonna be 50 restaurants that fit. There might only be 1, 2, or 3. There may not be doctors' offices that are built out already to your specific needs. So if there's, let's say 50 properties in the marketplace that you have, and let's say only 5 of them actually are plug and play, and they're at a high price, what's the chances of that tenant taking that space? That's why that initial consultation of where the pricing is and how we go about the process is so key, because it'll avoid all the back end headaches that you have, because you already know the contract negotiations of where we're at with pricing, where we're at with their favorability of escalations, free rent, concessions. We flushed everything out. And if we're not teaching you that, you gotta jump in and learn that. We have a process driven for it and something that you guys can plug into too. So staying on track, default. Outlines the conditions of a default. Sometimes I've seen tenants use default as an advantage to themselves and to what there is. However, what side of the equation are you on? You know, i.e. if you're in default and the landlord's not doing what they're supposed to, and then you're a tenant and you're in default, technically, right? Who's right, who's wrong? You know, so I don't want anyone thinking that. Just because they're in default in that aspect, it may be a landlord-driven approach to it. Maybe not. Maybe they just didn't pay. The cannabis location we just sold, it was a disaster.
Yeah.
The people, tenant improvement monies was thrown in, they put it in, ended up being an absolute disaster. We had to sell the asset for the seller when they engaged us.
What's
It
IE?
just happens.
What's IE exactly? You said IE.
IE is like an example phase.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so when I say IE, it's like an
So
example.
yeah, when you say stuff like that, you just gotta like, cause sometimes I don't get what you're saying, and I'm like,
I appreciate you sharing that.
so yeah, go in with that intention and just explain it to all of us, like because a lot of people are just getting into commercial, so we want to make sure that they're on the same page.
Yeah, well said.
A lot of this stuff is.
I think default clauses are really, how do we get out of the relationship? How, if we're in default, what does that look like? Who's responsible for what? What's going on? I always say know those ins and outs, because even though the hopes is you never have that happen, right? You don't want this to happen. In the event markets change and businesses change, you never know. So be prepared and have an exit strategy right from the beginning, because if you prepare your exit strategy and it never comes true, you don't have to worry. But if you do, and God forbid it does, you're already prepped with a landlord based on that. And then if you say what you do what you say, chances are the landlords are human beings. They're people like us. They have emotions, they have logic, they have families, they have children. They understand things better than you really think. It's a matter of communication with them versus the opposite, which is then confrontation. Remember, if you're not communicating, you're not doing a good job. It's a landlord-tenant relationship. You have to have it. So default is one of those big items. You should know. I always ask, what are the default terms for this? Where are we going? Whenever we do any contract negotiations too, the top things, you wanna know those exits. Not because they're gonna come true, but because you gotta know every piece of this puzzle. So know those things. Remedies, specific actions the landlord can take in the event of a default. A remedy could be, well, you have 6 months to clean this up. We're dealing with one of our tenants right now in a building. This guy has not paid consistently, month over month, year over year, CAM charge, all this. We have to chase him down constantly. What does that look like? It sucks, right? It sucks. Puts you in a position. So imagine you're the landlord in those positions. So we gotta think like them. We gotta feel and understand like them to be able to then remedy for them. So what are the remedies looking like? Well, typically they're gonna be those PGs, the PPs. If we're personally guaranteeing something and somebody has attached that on there, pretty high level safe. My family's safe, you know, I can make sure I'm the landlord and I'm relying on this income. I can be safe here knowing that because I have a default mechanism. One of the best things I was ever taught was a line of credit as a PG on that associated. And really, two high-level gentlemen I did a very large negotiation lease with taught me this. And they taught me that, Bruce, yes, I'm gonna PG and I want them to take a credit line out, up to $250,000 for it.
What is it? What would the?
It was incredible.
Never heard of that.
It was incredible. And it's something that we all understand because when you understand the magnitude of large money leasing, you don't want to go into business with somebody that's not going to pay.
Absolutely.
A lot of these stores, you see national tenants, they may be operating like, I can't even believe this thing's in operation. Right?
Yeah.
Nobody's here. Nobody, like, how do they pay? Well, it's because they're corporate guaranteed. So the landlord doesn't care if they buy anything, sell it, you know, it's whatever it is, they're going to get paid. Now for business, that sucks. Just one of those things. Good question. So renewal options.
Corporate guarantees, can you briefly explain why they're just so important?
Yeah, corporate guarantees come down to the business associate of the hub being able to guarantee that space. Now there's differences between that because sometimes there's a franchise versus a corporate that has that ownership and that satellite directly to it. So you have to know the differences. You know, is it on corporate or is it kind of corporate guided, so to speak, versus an independent franchise method where it's really on the operator?
What are some corporate guaranteed companies that you've kind of encountered that?
CVS is a big one.
Like Walgreens?
Yeah, it's national AAA rated credits.
Does that go for like, is like fast food corporate guaranteed or?
Yeah, they're going to attach it. Very standard, which is why those triple net leases are attractive for a flipper investor. They're getting that 10-year lease. Here's the concern and the fear, right? Everyone wants to buy these. I don't blame them. But 10 years, and let's say that food, that restaurant. I remember when Miami Grill came up here into Bergenfield. Do you guys ever remember that? Oh my God, it was one of my favorites.
Really?
Yeah, it's where I think it's a Walgreens or CVS, ironically, is across from the Strauss Hall. But it was great. They signed a 10-year lease. It seemed they were going to crush it. It was wonderful. 10 years later, they went out.
Wow.
Wasn't making money, wasn't profitable.
Wow.
And it's like, oh my God. Now, they probably weren't profitable for 4 or 5 years in terms of that, but they held that lease. And that's something in corporate guarantee. You'll see CVS's, things like that. Anyone credit rated. All right, so renewal options. When we look at renewals, think you do a 5-year lease, you do a 5-year renewal. Maybe you do 2 5-year renewals. Whatever the original lease is, you'd want to duplicate that same thing. I'm not going to do a 5-year lease and a 3-year option, typically.
Yeah.
If you do a 3-year lease, maybe you do a 3-year option. You follow or 2 3-year options. You do 5-year or 10-year straight. Once you do 10, I wouldn't do anything above 10 because it starts favoring tendencies. So I do 10 and then maybe 2 5-year options after. You follow? And that allows you to catch up to market rate because if the pricing in the initial lease 10 years ago, if I did a Hoboken lease 10 years ago, and then they had a renewal at similar pricing right now, guys, you know how much money the landlord would lose? I mean, literally, it could be drastic. It could be millions of dollars at that.
Yeah. And how confident are people, how confident are people when they have a business and they're gonna sign a 10-year lease? I mean, they must be very confident in their business, right? Like,
You
like
have to.
in terms of that. So it's like, it's kind of like game theory in a sense. Like, you know that this person's confident in their business, otherwise they wouldn't be doing this. So you know when somebody's going into that, you're not wasting your time because they're confident in that 10-year lease. And then you approach it with that gradual 3% increase so you can get that compounding effect. and then you go after that lease term is over, you do 5-year leases after that, because the business might be in a position where it's not as strong in 10 years. The market's completely different, correct?
You hit it right on the head, Adam.
Okay.
You hit it like, boom, drop the mic.
Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure.
Fantastic. I hope everyone is receiving it like that. What Adam just shared is gold. It's literally the exact relationship that you're having, and you'll see this in the marketplace. And then when you start seeing tenants that you want to rep or landlords and they're unreasonable, you start saying to yourself, hey, here's a standard. You're so far outside the box, I don't know if we can work together. You know, or hey, you're within the box, I think I can add value. Boom, let's run with this. Here's what we have. When we iron out, especially in the tenant consult, big things. Are you expecting TI? You know, the CAM charges, are you prepared to pay CAM? All these different things, so you can set yourself up for that winning formula with the landlord. Great questions. Security deposits. Remember, commercial, 3 months security. Residential is 1.5 months. Commercials, 3 months is a standard. Now, technically, you can ask more. You can ask less. It's a negotiation, guys. It's all a negotiation. But 3 months, so that means if my monthly rent is $10,000, security deposit's $30,000. Bruce, where would the difference be of that? Why do people accept less or more? Well, let's think about it. If it's a brand new space and you're giving it to a tenant that you just built this building on, and you're giving it to them, and they're putting some money in, and you're putting TI monies in, wouldn't you want to understand the security deposit at its highest amount? You would, to protect that new brand new space. But imagine the building's beat to shit, and the building sucks. And it literally looks like there's mold on it, and it's crazy. The floor looks dirty, you don't even want to step in it. Well, do you need a security deposit?
It would be fair.
I mean, in fairness, yeah, right, but security is for the withstanding part of the building.
Not to the highest.
See, it starts getting into a conversation. Let's have a conversation around what that security looks like. Hey, your building's kind of half-assed. Maybe I don't say it, but I say it nicely in the aspect of the way it's being received on the market. Because if it's not going to require a 3-month security. Think common sense, guys. Building's brand new, it's really nice, 5 years young, of course they're going to want to hire security. Building's a little less, it's beat up a little bit, shows some wear and tear. You can negotiate security a little bit better. You know, obviously if it's a good operator, you've seen their existing location and you've been to that tenant's space and you look at it and say on a random Tuesday at 11, you pop in and it's awesome and they're kicking butt and it's clean, everything, chances are at your location, that's the same. So what we always want to do is go a little bit more, and a lot of the landlords I work with, they're very, very stressed on making sure they understand who that tenant is, because they know what I've transferred to them knowledge, which is if we get a bad tenant in that driver's seat, guys, we're screwed. We're screwed. Thankfully in New Jersey, we can get these commercial tenants out rather quickly, 30 to 60 days. So it's not a residential situation where we can drag on. So there's favorability there. Well, what does it mean? It means security deposits are negotiable based on that, standard of 3 months.
Absolutely.
Insurance requirements outlines insurance coverage a tenant must maintain. Sometimes there's going to be points where a tenant needs additional insurance on a building because they have an applicable use that has hazardous material, has medical, has some other phases that require additional. That's where you're going to want to have the insurance requirements associated with that. And those items are typical from legal side. They're going to recommend things that have it. So to your point, we're not drafting these leases. We're just guiding them and saying, hey, all these points right here, I know from my experience, we got to hit. And if you're off on these, that's okay. But here, this one might be more important, or this one may be less important. Your knowledge to internalize it and share it. Personal guarantee, we talked about that. I threw that out there right from the get-go because I want everybody to understand when commercial real estate is had, you're playing with the big boys and girls. And that's going to be something that you better put your pants on, because if you're not prepared for things like that, you're not going to transact. So anyone on our team and anyone that's in this office, anyone outside listening, make sure if you're not talking with a tenant that's saying, hey, I know my business, I'm guaranteeing this and this is what's happening, chances are you can go through 98% of the details and get to that one point and blow it up. Why? Because why would a landlord take that risk? Simply put, they wouldn't. And simply put, if they do, they really believe in you, and there's a mechanism probably in the back end that they have, which if you got out, you can charge more rent or you can develop it. Because otherwise it's too risky. We teach too much. A lot of these people in these areas, they know a lot. All the information is really public on what you can do, so if somebody's read it and they're engaged on it, they're gonna be armed like a weapon with that lease contract. I know some that have negotiated high levels, some negotiated their pants off where the tenants run away. And that's the other side of the coin, offense and defense.
We got another question in the group chat.
Sure.
Or in the YouTube chat. We got commercial tenant doesn't pay rent. How many months does it usually take for an eviction? How can you avoid that situation? What clause would you, or what clause would protect the most to the landlord?
Personal guarantee will protect the landlord no matter how they go out with a credit line.
So
That's
how about so commercial tenant doesn't pay rent, how many months does an eviction usually take?
So if you start, let's call it week 1 as the process continuum starting point, you'll be able to get them out within 30 to 60 days in the state of New Jersey.
Okay.
So that's definitive.
Okay.
What you'd have is you want a good legal team, so great question, by the way. You want a good legal team that does these often. Think, who is the attorney that sends all the evictions out? You want to go jump on that, get them in because they know that process so well. Now here's the other thing. During that time, you're going to be evicting them, but also remember there's monies to be had from the tenant side. You want to try to negotiate with them in terms of some type of recapture after they're evicted. And what does that mean? Because you want to get them out. If you start receiving monies and the judge looks at it and says there's partial payment, you're screwed. Okay? That's an accepting of a continuing on a lease. So really good question. Commercially, you can get them out within 30 to 60 days if you properly do it from week 1 continuing on. Did I answer every part of that question?
How can you avoid that situation typically?
Yeah, avoiding the situation is I go layers deep with the tenant itself. I double check the financials and make sure that they have enough operating costs on that property for 6 to 12 months just to pay the expenses on it. And I look, how much money do they need to put into this operation to get it like up and running, see what the difference of the costs are from standards, and then see what their actual sales are. Look at what their trailing 12, 24-month sales are so that you can get a good predictor of how much money the business's revenue is generating. So what's the revenue of that business? And then typically, if you want to go further, you can start getting into tax returns, you can start getting into personal financials, and you can start going into net worth, which means, hey, I don't have a business, I'm starting this up, my wife's taking over, I'm a successful operator, here's what's going on, I've got $2 million in this account, this is utilized, we're taking $1 million of it, putting it in the business right here, my personal financials show this, I'm worth $12 million, and this will be suffice, is that okay? That's what you're gonna see a lot of people are, they're gonna put a net worth sheet, and that's what we've seen. Big leases, hey, you got 2 locations, they're gonna put revenue generated in those locations, years of time involved. That's a really good way to understand. The last, show up at that location unannounced. Where do they operate now? Show up at that location just as you're walking in the door, and call them or text them and see what's going on. You'll have a very good idea if you unannounced walk in. Imagine you walk into our office at any given day.
Yeah.
You're gonna see people going every which direction.
Yeah.
You follow me? Leadership forums. If somebody walked in here, they're gonna be like, what the heck? This business is running.
Yeah.
You
I trust this company.
Imagine you walked in and nobody's here, it's ghost town, and there's nobody at the door that I'd walk in and be like, what's going on?
That's a good idea. That's a really good point. So say that one more time.
Walk in unannounced to any property tenant that you are seeking for a landlord and just see their operation.
And that's how you avoid tenants that you would eventually, or someone would eventually evict.
Yeah.
You see how the business is running in a time where they're not expecting you to come in.
Exactly.
So you're like, you could actually get a gauge on what's going on.
Exactly.
Okay, understood.
And we just deployed that same strategy in one of the tenancies that we got, a nice sized lease. Our strategy was, hey, go shoot over there, Wednesday afternoon or whatever. Go shoot over there Wednesday afternoon and just show up and see what's going on and pretend you're a customer. And that's always been my secret trick, is when I go to these places, I could be an insurance agent. Right? You could be anything of whatever it is in terms of that regard. Obviously, above par. Nothing there, but jokingly, it's kind of just showing up and saying, hey, we're interested in the property, we're taking some more information around it, or a customer or something. Uninvasive thing, uninvasive. Okay, great way to do it. Termination rights, specifics and conditions under which it can be terminated. Those are key. Remember, those are the same as how do we get out of the relationship? What are the termination clauses? All right, so we just unpacked the 15 most important lease clauses that you guys should be aware of and understand alongside myself that we practice every single day in this marketplace. If you do this at a high level and you understand these clauses, you are going to transact, make a bigger impact, make twice as much money, and literally do it in half the amount of time. Because the brain, once they understand these, it's easy to repeat it and know what the difference of what's real, what's a pipe dream, and who's a tire kicker. And that's exactly what we want to flush out. Big thing in 26 is to flush out the tire kickers, guys. I want everybody that is not legitimate business people trying to grow themselves and their businesses out of our life, out of our office, everywhere. You know how many times I've been wasted with people that aren't real? That's why we talk about this, and that's why we're changing. That's why we're challenging everybody here to level up, get yourself smarter, understand these clauses, and get these tire kickers out of the door. Moving forward, leverage, how you control the negotiation. We're going to stay on track here. There are going to be market vacancies, and that's the vacant spaces. It gives you more leverage as a tenant. You have tenant strength. A strong creditworthy tenant has more leverage. And landlord holding costs to focus on. When you control negotiation through your vacancy, your strength, and your holding costs, you'll always know where you're at net as a landlord. Okay, those big things are there. I.e., market vacancy. Let's say that most of the marketplace has got a 70% vacancy. Well, that's a lot. It means that it's undesired space. Your price per square foot, the value of it, inverse. That's why we start with that. Second, tenant strength. If a tenant's going in there and really virtually has no strength at all, you might as well flip a coin on whether or not they're going to keep paying after month 3 or 4. We put a tenant once in where the first month they didn't pay. We were literally at the first month's rent, and then after it didn't pay. I don't know how it's possible that somebody literally went into it and did that. And thankfully, we got them right out of there, and it was something that was corrected immediately. But even when you do that, sometimes it gets into that cell. It's a very low probability to happen, but it does. Over quantity, you'll get your quality. All right, moving ahead in terms of landlord costs. If you know your hard costs and variable costs associated as a landlord, you're going to then create what's called the CAM charge. The CAM charge is the common area maintenance. So what we're going to want to do in terms of just something like that, if you own property.
Oh, Bruce, quick thing.
Yep.
Time is 12:33.
Oh, it is.
So.
Okay. So
But feel free to keep going. We got a small crowd here, but
we're gonna keep it going. We're gonna run through this.
Yeah, but like this is totally extra time. Just
We're giving some bonus time.
Giving some bonus time.